Okay, I got a controller. This one connector, it's identified gear here. It's on the bottom of this bottom row all the way to the all the way over to the edge. And then just make sure your polarity is right, where the white wires are going to the right, so the light wire is going to the right. And that plugs into your landing gear. Then it's this upper wire here. All the other wires come off the bottom of the board. This wire comes off the top of the board, and it's identified as AUX. And that is what controls your gear if you're going to manually control your gear. Now, I'll show you in the configurator that it's possible to automatically control your gear. And you don't have to manually do it, which is, in my opinion, a pretty nice way to do it, because it's just one less thing to deal with while you're flying. But I just have a little BEC here hooked up, and I powered up my receiver and my controller board, and I can cycle the gear. Now here you can see my nose gear jammed up here. That is because I have that strut too deep. So I'm just gonna, I can see it sticking out way too far. Just want it to barely stick out, and it should, pretty much the wheel should touch that. Touch that foam, just barely touch the foam. Okay, so that gets that, and then with the gear in the down position, this one's jammed up too. This one here on this side, I got the axle too deep here too. And I'm not sure these gear have, some of the more expensive gear have circuitry in them that stop them from binding. I'm not sure these do. I've never had one burn up or anything, but you don't want to get these to bind. You want to make sure they actuate freely. Then with them down, you can just twist these wheels till you get them till they're facing just straight front to back. You can give these set screws one last good tighten. Now, you can also take a look at it. Setting just flat and make sure. Looks like this gear on this side could come up maybe a 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so all the wheels are pointing in the right direction. They're all cycling well. And that's the landing gear installed, and I'll show you something about the configurator here in a bit. Okay, before I show you the configurator, I just want to go over this way to install this over-wing fairing. Much easier than what's in the instructions. I think I talk about this in my landing gear instructions also. But a guy named James Bradley, he showed me this trick. It was a much easier way to do this. But what I do is I trial fit this with the body installed, and I've asked him to make this change. But one thing I've noticed is that this body in this front area is too tall, so you've got to come in here and knock off a good 3 millimeters all throughout this area. When you do this, it'll make this front canopy and over wing fairing fit much better. I just sand it off 3-4 millimeters, and then I just fill it back full of epoxy. I do have touch-up paint available. Someone sends me an email. It's probably $3 for touch-up paint. I can send it out. But what I do after with the profile fuselage installed is I'll put in the wing installed. I'll put this over wing fairing in place and put a piece of Scotch tape here to hold this all perfectly aligned like I like it. And then you can pop this back off, and this will be in the right position. Now you want to glue these two blocks that come in your kit to the back side of this over wing fairing. You just epoxy them in, and you can drill a couple holes. Now these are pilot holes for these 2 millimeter cap screws. They're about 10 millimeter long, so you want to use a drill bit that's small enough that these can screw in. Don't screw the screws in yet. And then you want to glue those same parts on this side, on the opposite side, on the canopy. Now these cuts aren't in it yet. You're just putting the blocks in. I usually taper them in the back so they kind of fit that radius, and I epoxy them in place. So they're pretty much in the same position where these two blocks are. Now with the tape in place and these blocks glued into place, I go ahead and drill the 2 millimeter hole all the way through, and that leaves these two smaller holes in this part, and you can size those up just a little bit bigger than 2 millimeters, so these screws will slide in easily. This is after you've taken the tape off, remove this part, and then I take my Dremel drum sander wheel and I grind down so I expose that smaller hole so it's only a half a hole, and then that fits in there, you know, perfectly with these screws once I install these two 2 millimeter by 10 millimeter screws, cap screws. Then that fits. Now when your wing is installed, I've been putting this kit has it, I've been putting blocks of plywood, 1/8 inch plywood underneath these two screw holes. When you get your wing installed and you drill these back two holes for your over wing fairing, and those will be in place, and this will just kind of be sitting here loose. And then when you install your canopy, you know, that'll lock that all in, and that'll be nice and flush, and that'll be nice fitting, and that it's a lot easier than the screw together method that I used before, and works really well. Okay, I'm going to pull up my configurator program. And I'm probably going to have to update this controller. I'm going to push the button on the controller before I plug in the USB. And this will start flashing. Now if you get that too many frame retries, usually just wiggle the USBs and get it to, yeah, get it to start updating. I'm going to update the software. Okay, upload successful. I think now's a good time just to mention that we added this RPM sensor calibration, and you want to make sure that the black wires that go from the motor to the wire interface board on the nacelles are disconnected, and you just go ahead and hit, I can do it right now, this controller's not hooked to anything. It says disconnect RPM sensor leads and press OK, and I can hit OK here, and it'll say calibration was successful. And we just had some problem with some controllers reading the RPM signal, and this just makes them read that RPM signal better and easier. If we go to landing gear tab, this is the landing gear tab. You have really three options available. You can actuate it manually, which with that AUX input wire from your receiver. You can actuate it automatically by reading gear up nacelle angle, gear down nacelle angle, gear up collective pitch point, and gear down collective pitch point, and then also RPM. So the controller will look at all those values and determine whether you're coming down or ascending, and whether you're converting in or converting out of airplane mode. And it'll automatically retract your gear. And then the last way is test mode, and test mode ignores the RPM signal, so you can sit here without the rotor spinning and set up these points, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to power up, let's have a BEC here. I'm going to power up my ship, turn on my radio, and it's in manual mode now. And you can see when I flip the AUX switch, the gear goes up and down. And that, if they're going the wrong direction, you can just swap it in your transmitter. And that's fine if that's the way you want to actuate it. Now if you want to actuate it in the automatic mode, then the aircraft's going to look for nacelle angle and collective pitch points. Now I don't have those plugged into this board, but I'll tell you where to set them. I like my collective pitch point set right at about mid-stick, and this is a little bit below mid-stick, 1.4 milliseconds. And you can use this, you can get your collective pitch stick set where you want it and just hit the set button and it'll record that value. But these are pretty close to right. That's so if you're just climbing out of a hover, you'll be above 1.4, and if you're descending, you'll be below 1.4. Then these two nacelle angles are where it senses nacelle angle, and where it, if these conditions are met, the RPM, the nacelle angle, and the collective pitch point, then it will retract or extend your gear. And these are what I use. I've noticed this gear up 75 is a little low, and you can go like 85 here, and this isn't a bad one, 88 for the gear down. So you have to be almost all the way in helicopter mode for it to bring the gear down. And here you have to be it's 75. The ship's going so fast and is so far away from you, you really can't see the gear come down. So that's why I've been running at about 85 here, so the gear comes up a little earlier and you can actually see it come up. But if you leave these values as is and you hit this ignore RPM, then when you move your sticks and you get your collective pitch high enough and your nacelle angle high enough, then the gear will automatically retract. And then of course when you decrease both of them, then your gear will automatically extend. And then when you're done testing that and you feel like you get them to where you want them, then you can turn off your test mode and you can save to device, and this information will be saved to the device. So that's basically all you need to know, is that you can do it in manual mode with the aux switch, or you can do it in automatic mode, and that really reduces one thing you have to deal with. Okay, right.